So I want to ask you a question. Have you ever walked away from a conversation with someone who seemed, on the surface at least, incredibly nice?
Oh, I think we all have.
Right. Like maybe they presented themselves as morally superior or just deeply logical and really calm. But as you're, walking back to your car or to your desk,
Hmm.
you realize you feel completely exhausted.
Yeah, or just intensely confused.
Exactly. Confused or even subtly attacked. You can't quite put your finger on what just happened, but your heart rate is up. You're replaying their words on a loop in your head.
And you feel like you just lost a game you didn't even know you were playing.
Yes. It's such a uniquely maddening
It
experience.
really is. You
Yeah.
find yourself dissecting the conversation piece by piece,
Yeah.
trying to figure out where things went off the rails, or honestly just wondering if you're losing your mind,
You start questioning your own reality. Like you're thinking, were they actually insulting me just now? Or, I don't know, am I being overly sensitive?
which is exactly what they want you to feel.
Right. So today we are taking a deep dive into this profoundly fascinating text titled Deceit from the Blind Pure Souls. It is honestly an absolute masterclass in recognizing unhealthy social dynamics.
It really breaks it all down.
It does. Specifically, it strips down how to interact with people who operate from a place of ego or insecurity or manipulation, but they completely disguise those motives under this mask of kindness or purity or objective logic.
It removes the camouflage entirely. By looking closely at these dynamics, we gain a clear framework for understanding, well, not just what these individuals are doing on the surface,
Mm-hmm.
but the underlying mechanics of why they're doing it.
Right.
And more importantly, we can look at how to stop falling into the specific traps they set up.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We want to help you recognize these hidden patterns, these subtle social tripwires, so you can protect your clarity, your time, and your emotional stability.
Which is so crucial.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where does this kind of dynamic usually start? Because looking at the text, the initial interaction rarely involves like a raised voice or outright hostility.
No, almost never. The front line of these social dynamics is often something that looks entirely innocent on paper.
Which is what makes it so confusing.
Exactly. It's usually a simple question. But there is a really mechanical distinction to make here between a genuine question and a manipulative bad faith question.
Right, bad faith.
Yeah. In a healthy dynamic, when someone asks you something, they are actively trying to grasp your meaning. They listen, they might ask a clarifying follow-up, but their goal is comprehension.
They want to understand you.
Right. But a manipulative question has a completely different internal anatomy. The intent is entirely reversed.
So how does that actually play out in real life?
Let's break it down. The person asks you a question, they wait for your answer, and the moment you finish speaking, they immediately dismiss it, or twist it, or weaponize your response against you. The goal isn't to understand your perspective at all. The goal is to manufacture an opportunity to invalidate you.
It almost feels like a courtroom scenario.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
It's not two friends having a chat over coffee. It's a prosecutor cross-examining a hostile witness. Because a prosecutor doesn't ask a question to learn the truth.
No, they already have their narrative written.
Exactly. They're asking a question to trap the witness into giving them a specific, out of context soundbite that they can take back to the jury to destroy the witness's credibility.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism at play. Your answer is merely the raw material they need to prove a point they decided on, long before you even opened your mouth.
Which is so frustrating.
It is. And when this pattern appears repeatedly in a relationship or a workplace, it is a glaring indicator that the conversation itself is not being conducted in good faith. You are attempting to communicate, but they are attempting to win.
Which brings up a really insidious part of this whole thing. What happens after the conversation?
Right, the aftermath.
Let's say you refuse to play the game, you stay neutral, or you just don't give them that explosive answer they wanted to weaponize. If they can't trap you to your face, they take whatever you gave them, twist the narrative, and start distributing it to others.
The extension into gossip. It's a primary mechanism of control for these types of people. It's how they manage their environment when they realize they can't directly manage you.
I always hear people say things like, oh, they gave a funhouse mirror version of what I said. That almost makes it sound like an accident or like a mild distortion.
Yeah, it's not an accident.
The reality is much more deliberate. They take a 2-hour conversation, pull one single unflattering frame out of context, and show it to everyone as if it's the entire movie.
It's spot on.
It's like taking a single frame out of a film to prove the hero is actually the villain. But obviously, you can't be in every room to defend yourself, so how do you even know this is happening behind your back?
There are highly specific indicators the text points out. You will start to notice people suddenly reacting to things you never actually said.
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
Or you'll walk into a room and realize an entire group of people suddenly shares the exact same, highly specific misunderstanding about your motives.
Like they all got the same memo.
Exactly. Information about you has clearly been passed around, but it's been run through a deliberate filter of exaggeration.
And when you realize that an entire group shares a false misunderstanding about you, the most natural, primal human instinct is to rush in and explain yourself.
Of course it is.
You want to set the record straight, you want to present the facts and clear your name, but looking at the mechanics of these interactions in the text, jumping in to explain is actually a massive trap.
It is arguably the most difficult trap to avoid, simply because our desire to be understood is deeply wired into us.
Totally.
I mean, explaining yourself builds respect and strengthens communication with genuine people. If someone actually wants to understand you, clarification is necessary and healthy.
Right.
But explaining yourself repeatedly to someone who has already formed a rigid judgment about you is functionally useless.
You are just handing them more ammunition. You're giving them a new script to tear apart.
Exactly. When a person has formed a rigid judgment, further explanation doesn't shift their perspective. It just provides fresh material for them to argue against.
Wow.
They aren't analyzing your defense to see if they are wrong.
Yeah.
They are scanning your defense for new weaknesses to exploit.
But wait, doesn't staying silent basically look like you're admitting guilt? Doesn't letting people believe a false version of reality make you look weak or passive to the outside world?
What's fascinating here is that leaning into silence is actually significantly stronger than engaging in an argument.
Really?
Stronger.
Yes. We have to look at the underlying mechanics of these environments. They are entirely built on subtle mind games.
Like what?
Emotional baiting, passive aggression, hidden insults, shifting expectations. And why do manipulators use these specific tactics?
To make you feel unstable, to make you defensive.
That is the core of it. Manipulators rely on predictable emotional reactions. If they poke you with a false accusation, they expect you to get desperate and over-explain. And that reaction is what gives them control.
Exactly. It provides them with emotional stimulation and validates their power over you. When you maintain calm boundaries and refuse to endlessly explain yourself, you deny them that leverage.
You deny them the dance. They throw a dart, expecting you to wince and shout, and instead you just look at them.
And without that chaotic reaction, their behavior suddenly looks ridiculous, even to outside observers.
Which makes me wonder about the motivation here. I always assumed people twisted words and baited others just out of, pure malice.
A lot of people assume that.
But looking at how much exhausting effort it takes to maintain this web of control, it almost feels like a defense mechanism. Are they doing this to protect their own ego?
That hypothesis aligns perfectly with the psychology behind this behavior. Often, this intense need for control is an elaborate defense mechanism designed to protect a shockingly fragile self-image.
Huh.
This brings us to the text's breakdown of subtle narcissism and emotional projection.
Yeah, because when we hear narcissism, we usually picture the loud, cartoonish villain who constantly brags about how great they are.
The obvious narcissist, right?
Right. But the framework we are looking at highlights a much more subtle, covert presentation. These individuals might present themselves as deeply humble, highly spiritual, or morally pure.
Yes, the pure mask.
But underneath that mask, they are quietly manipulating every variable in the room to maintain absolute control over how they are perceived.
They guard their identity at all costs. Any piece of information or any interaction that challenges their curated self-image is instantly rejected, or minimized, or redirected towards someone else.
And the humble mask is incredibly effective because society generally doesn't question someone who claims to be acting out of selflessness.
Nobody wants to attack the quote-unquote nice guy, which leads to the biggest red flag for this specific personality type.
Hypocrisy.
Yes, massive hypocrisy.
You will literally watch a person accuse others of the exact behavior they themselves are displaying in real time. They will claim to be totally free of ego while fiercely, almost viciously defending their status and their moral purity.
It's the paradox of claiming, I am entirely without ego, and I will verbally destroy anyone who suggests otherwise.
Here's where it gets really interesting. There is a specific scenario the text mentions that illustrates this perfectly, and I think everyone listening has experienced it.
Oh, the fragment triggering.
Yes. Have you ever been talking to someone explaining a really nuanced situation and they get triggered by a single tiny fragment of a sentence, just like 3 or 4 words.
Absolutely.
And they latch onto that fragment, completely ignoring the larger context of everything you just spent 5 minutes saying.
It is a hallmark of this dynamic, and we can actually map the psychology behind it.
How so?
Well, language requires context to function.
Yeah.
But some people process language through the filter of their own personal biases, assumptions, or past emotional injuries. Once an unresolved internal trigger is hit, the cognitive processing of the conversation shuts down entirely.
So to put that in an everyday, sort of explain it like I'm five scenario, imagine you tell a coworker, hey, things look busy, I'll handle compiling this report for you.
Right.
A normal contextual reaction is, thanks for the help. But if that coworker has a deep-seated fear of being seen as incompetent, their brain projects that intense insecurity onto your words.
They don't hear "I'll help."
Right. They hear, you think I'm too stupid to do this, and suddenly you are no longer having a conversation about a report, you are fighting a ghost from their past.
That is an excellent illustration of emotional projection. They become completely disassociated from the reality of your actual words.
Wow.
At that exact moment, they are reacting entirely to their own internal narrative. If you try to keep talking and explaining your original intent, you are no longer communicating.
What are you doing then?
You are merely providing a physical target for them to defend their emotional reaction against.
You are stepping into the line of fire of a battle they are fighting with themselves.
Exactly.
Which perfectly explains why trying to logic your way out of that situation always fails. Because they are fundamentally misinterpreting neutral statements as deeply personal attacks.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this mechanism leads into one of the most intractable social dynamics we face, which is what happens when individuals treat their personal emotional experience as the ultimate objective measure of truth.
The whole concept of feelings as facts.
Exactly that. Now, it is crucial to validate that feelings are real, and they matter.
Of course.
Everyone's emotional experience is valid to them. However, when someone believes their feelings alone dictate what is objectively true in the physical world, disagreements become structurally impossible to resolve.
Because if their feeling is the undeniable truth, then any challenge to their perspective isn't just a difference of opinion, it's processed as a direct personal attack on their reality.
Yes.
Like if someone feels left out of a meeting, that feeling of loneliness or frustration is totally real.
Right, the feeling is real.
But if they take that feeling and conclude, you intentionally excluded me to sabotage my career, they are treating their emotion as an objective fact. Disentangling that is impossible if they refuse to look at the actual evidence of why the meeting was scheduled.
The emotion dictates the reality for them. And the underlying reason people default to this mechanism, it's fascinating.
What does the text say about that?
It's about judgment preceding understanding. The source states that certainty feels much safer than curiosity.
Wow. That concept is so powerful. Certainty feels safer than curiosity.
It reveals a profound truth about human cognitive load. People generally prefer a simple black and white narrative over a complex, nuanced reality.
Because it's easier.
Because it takes significantly less mental energy. It takes vulnerability and cognitive effort to say, I am feeling attacked, but I might be misinterpreting the situation.
Yeah, that takes a lot of self-awareness.
It is much easier and feels much safer to the ego to instantly judge someone and slot them into a pre-written narrative. I am the good, pure victim, and you are the bad, confusing aggressor.
Which also explains why these individuals constantly try to elevate themselves by lowering others.
Right.
They will highlight your tiny flaws, exaggerate your mistakes, or frame you as fragile just to reinforce their own sense of superiority. But true confidence rarely requires putting others down. Constructing your identity around someone else's perceived flaws reveals a profound baseline insecurity.
Absolutely. So we've mapped out the traps, we've looked at the bad faith questions, the mechanics of gossip, the emotional baiting, the projection, and the danger of treating feelings as facts.
So the critical question for the listener now becomes, what is the actual actionable defense strategy? How do you operate in a workplace or a family dynamic where these behaviors are entrenched?
The ultimate advice from the text comes down to maintaining calm emotional distance.
But we really need to define what that actually means in practice. Because in the heat of a frustrating argument, emotional distance sounds like an impossible platitude.
It's easier said than done, sure.
How do you actually do it?
It requires a fundamental cognitive reframing of the person you are interacting with. In the moment, instead of viewing them as a rational debater you have to convince or an attacker you have to defeat,
Yeah.
you have to view them as a malfunctioning system.
A malfunctioning system.
Think of a broken vending machine. If you put your money in a vending machine and it doesn't give you a soda, you don't stand there and argue with it.
Right.
You don't try to use logic to explain why it owes you a drink.
Yeah.
You recognize the mechanism is broken, you step back, and you go about your day.
You don't take it personally that the machine is broken.
Exactly.
You can acknowledge their state without surrendering your own perception of reality. You can say, I see that you are very angry about this, without agreeing that you did something to cause or deserve that anger.
Taking that a step further, you have to accept that people carry rigid expectations of who you are supposed to be. These expectations are built from their own stereotypes, their past traumas, and their own projections.
And when you behave authentically, and it doesn't match the imaginary version of you they created in their head, they will get frustrated.
But it is not your responsibility to contort yourself to become the person someone else expected you to be.
Authenticity will always disappoint people who are deeply attached to an illusion.
That realization is the anchor for staying grounded. You protect your time and your psychological energy by learning to quickly identify the difference between someone who communicates openly and someone who operates through defense, projection, and manipulation.
Because recognizing these patterns isn't about becoming cynical toward the world.
No, not at all.
It's about becoming realistically aware of your social environment so you don't burn out trying to fix things that aren't yours to fix. Speak honestly when communication is actually possible.
Set firm boundaries when respect disappears.
And walk away when conversations turn into games.
Yes.
So what does this all mean? It means learning to release the burden of fixing every broken dynamic you encounter. Not every conflict needs to be solved, and not every false narrative needs to be corrected by you.
Protect your energy.
Exactly. The healthiest, strongest approach is to recognize the pattern, step back from the broken vending machine, and protect your energy so you can invest it in people who are capable of real, genuine connection.
You know, when you think about those rigid expectations and illusions people hold on to, and how furiously angry they get when you don't match them, it brings to mind a final thought from the text. Something to mull over the next time you find yourself caught in one of these exhausting circular arguments.
What's that?
If someone's entire interaction with you is based on a completely fabricated illusion they've created in their own head, when they are angrily arguing with you, are they actually just arguing with themselves?